Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the Caregiver Support Program Spring Mini Conference 2026, entitled The Importance of Heart, Mind, and Community in Caregiving. We are so excited to support this year's Baltimore County Department of Aging's initiative and host this conference for you today. I am your host, Kathleen Koenig-Stoffel. I am the Caregiver Support Program Manager and fellow caregiver. With me today is Nicole DiGilio, Caregiver Specialist for Outreach and Education, and Russia Singleton, Dementia Care Navigator. Standing in the wings is our supportive communications team who will be here to help you with any technical difficulties. We have a wonderful lineup of professional speakers who will be sharing their experience and expertise today. We know time is precious, so we hope you can stay with us a full time, but if you can't, feel free to leave and come when you are able. This is being recorded, so you'll be able to revisit this at a later time as well. Now, Nicole will go over some housekeeping rules for today.
Hey everybody. So as Kathleen mentioned, our communications team is on standby. So if you're having any technical issues, you can certainly give them a call. Their number is there on the screen at 410-887-2002. Any questions you might have during the presentations today, the chat box is available. That's going to be down in the lower right corner of your screen. You'll see a little chat bubble. You just click on that. Any questions you have, you can put those in the chat. If there's time at the end of each presentation, we will address those questions. If there's not time, just know that you will be getting contact info and presentations and slides from all the presenters afterwards, so we can always follow up via email or call for anything that we're not able to address today. If you need any closed captions, that is available in the bottom lower left corner of your screen. There's a little CC, you just click that. We're going to be sending out a survey that's going to be in the chat. We'll put it in the chat a few times throughout the presentation today. And that's just so you can give us feedback so that we can continue to create programming that's helpful for you. And then, as I said, we will be sending out slides, any resources mentioned after the presentation, probably early next week, and that'll be available to all the participants today. All right.
Thank you, Nicole. Now it is my honor to introduce the Director of the Baltimore County Department of Aging, Hyung Tan. Prior to coming to the county, Hyung was the Deputy Commissioner of Aging and Care Services at the Baltimore City Health Department, starting her career as a community health worker and being a family caregiver for her grandparents. Hyung is a longtime public health and community advocate for older adults and caregivers. Additionally, she is a strong voice for older adults on the national level, serving on the U.S. Aging Board as well as other boards and commissions. Welcome, Director Tan.
Thank you, Kathleen. Good morning, everybody. It is my pleasure to welcome you on behalf of the Baltimore County Department of Aging to our annual virtual conference. I also bring warm greetings on behalf of our county executive, Kathy Klassmeyer. I'm so glad to be here today and to welcome you to our annual virtual conference and to share how important it is for us as a department that caregivers in Baltimore County have the support and services that you need to do what you do. As someone, as Kathleen mentioned, as someone who's cared for my grandparents, my grandmother lived with Alzheimer's for more than 10 years, and we were able to support her at home. And as a parent to young kids and supporting my own older parents from afar, I know how hard but meaningful this work can be. And the right support and connections can make all the difference. This year, our work, as Kathleen mentioned, is grounded in a simple idea: heart, mind, and community. And caregivers take in the caregiving that it takes and the compassion that it takes to be caregivers. It requires us to care for ourselves, our mental health, and building a community of strong support systems. So today, the message that I wanted to share is that you don't have to do this alone. That's why we're so proud to have you here and proud to have partners in this work. I wanted to thank the Baltimore County Public Library, the Better Business Bureau, and the Student Support Network, who have been partnering in this program, in this work for the last year to bring you resources and support to caregivers in Baltimore County. And today is about providing practical tools, useful information, and more importantly, a chance to connect virtually and with each other. And so I just wanted to say thank you for being here. I wanted to say that we see you, we value our caregivers, and we value in building this community of caregivers. And thank you for being here. I also wanted to say that I hope you take away something today, whether it's a new resource or a connection or just a moment to recharge and to say, aha, I feel that too. And so before I close, I just wanted to say thank you for being here. Thank you for committing to yourself as caregivers. And then I also wanted to recognize that this work wouldn't be possible without the incredible hardworking team at Baltimore County Department of Aging. The caregiving team is a small but mighty team, and I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge their hard work and dedication. Online today is Kathleen, Nicole, Russia, Ronnie, and then, of course, our communications team who is on standby to support this virtual conference. So team, if we can just take a moment to recognize you and say thank you, appreciate that. Again, Kathleen, thanks for letting me provide opening remarks on behalf of our department and our county, and thank you to the caregivers that make up our community online.
Thank you so much, Young. I appreciate you being here. I appreciate your words and all your support for the program and for the department. Now it is my pleasure to introduce Roni Gamlia Nadam, who will speak on the first component of our initiative, HEART. Roni is a child and maternal mental health advocate dedicated to advancing equity and access for families across Maryland. She serves as the Child and Family Program Manager at the Mental Health Association of Maryland, where she oversees Healthy New Moms and co-leads the statewide campaign, Children's Mental Health Matters, connecting families and providers to resources that support early intervention and reduce stigma. Roni holds a BA in psychology from the University of Maryland, Baltimore County, and brings over 5 years of experience in mental health research, education, and advocacy, including community-based work as a facilitator and consultant with the Strengthening Families program. Welcome, Roni.
Thank you so much, and thank you to the team for welcoming the Mental Health Association of Maryland. And thank you for everyone who is here today and will watch this recording later on. As was shared, my name is Roni. I am the Child and Family Program Manager at the Mental Health Association of Maryland. And really what my goal is today is to lay a lot of foundations for the heart component of the caregiving experience. We're going to talk about mental health a lot. We'll talk about myths. We'll talk about some of the things that you all are probably experiencing and are aware of more than, myself, because you guys are on the ground doing this work. And so again, welcome everyone. I wanted to start off with a quote that I came across as I was, preparing for today's session. It says, "There are only 4 kinds of people in the world: those who have been caregivers, those who are currently caregivers, and those who will be caregivers, and those who will need caregivers." And this quote really, stands out to me because when we are speaking about the caregiving experience, it is so integral in, holding our society together, right? It kind of encompasses that everyone at a point will cross through the caregiving experience, whether it's that you're providing that care or you're receiving that care. And so for all of you that are doing this work, I just want to let you know that it's so important, especially when we talk about mental health. Your experiences are very important. And so some of our objectives today, as I mentioned, we're going to really overview mental health and address some myths. We'll talk about the invisible weight of caregiving, and we'll identify some signs of mental health struggles and how to seek help. We'll talk about burnout and some of the signs and its impact on your mental health. And then we'll go over the 3 unspoken G's of caregiving. We'll end with that and with a couple of resources as well, too. So I wanted to start with actually sharing my mother's caregiving experience. As I was preparing this, I was trying to think of a bridge that I could share with all of us. And the first person that came to mind was my mother, or is my mother. And my mother was the caregiver of my grandmother for, I would say, a good part of my adult life. I remember hearing her, tell stories about some of the things that she would have to do to take care of the health and the wellness of my grandmother. But she also mentioned, a lot of the things that she had to balance, right, in this caregiving experience. And one of the first things that she would talk about is financial stress, right? That was something that was very taxing for her as she was taking care of my grandmother. She also would mention geographical distance. My grandmother lived, sorry, in Cameroon, and we were based in the United States, and so there was that distance between how can I take care of, my mom that is thousands of miles away from me, right, in a completely different time zone. There was also lack of social support. A lot of what my mom had to do to take care of my grandmother lacked support, from the people around her. Unfortunately, there were family responsibilities, that familial connection, distinct, and not saying that one is better than the other, but distinct from, maybe more of a paid experience. My mom was taking care of her mom, right, my grandmother, and so there was that connection that maybe blurred the lines a little bit in terms of emotion. There was her nursing job that she had to take care of, physical demands, grief, right? When my grandmother passed on, in addition to just the burdens and the weights that she carried in caregiving, she now had to navigate grief. And all of these things came together to really impact my mom's mental health. And my mom speaks about her experiences often. And I start with this to anchor what we'll be talking about today, because with the caregiving experience, there are 1,000,001 factors that contribute to one's overall wellness and their mental health. It's not just the day in and out of taking care of a client or taking care of a family member or of an individual. It's the stress, it's the demands of carrying things, it's the social support that all come together to impact your mental health. And so with that being said, and I'll say that today is going to be, interactive. If you're able to, you can drop it in the chat if you just kind of want to reflect, within yourself. That's totally fine too. But I'd love to kind of, throw this question out of what is one word or phrase that describes your caregiving experience, right? If you could maybe put out a phrase or a word to describe what your caregiving experience has been, what would you say? And you can put that in the chat. I don't see the chat, so if our team wants to kind of call them out, you can, but for the sake of time, I'll also, move forward. Okay, I am seeing some things. I'm seeing exhausting. That's real. I'm seeing rewarding. I love that. I think sometimes we, think automatically of negative things, but I'm also seeing fulfilling. I'm seeing complicated. These are amazing phrases, and I'm thankful for you all dropping that in the chat. And so with all of those things, daunting, I'm seeing as well too, challenging. Yes, these are all real experiences, and overwhelming as well. And so with all that being said, let's kind of dive into foundations of mental health. I'll share a very general overview of mental health, and we'll go into specifics. But mental health encompasses our emotional, psychological, and social well-being. It's a state, right, of well-being that enables people to cope with the stressors of life, realize their abilities, learn, work well, and contribute to their community. It's a basic human right. This is kind of the textbook definition of mental health, but I always like to preface and to add context that, if because someone's mental health is, they're experiencing challenges, they're not able to contribute to their community or, cope or realize their abilities in the way that, society wants to, make them feel pressured to, it doesn't mean that they are less of a valuable person to our society, right? So I always have to preface with that. But mental health encompasses the emotional, the psychological, and the social well-being of a person. It's very comprehensive. And when we talk about mental health, that means that there are a lot of myths, a lot of, stigmatizing language that we use, a lot of things that are simply untrue. And I want to start off by kind of breaking down those myths. And the first thing is that mental health is inherently negative. I don't know about you all, but I know, especially being in this line of work, I hear people kind of refer to mental health as something that's maybe like a diagnosis, like inherently, or that's something that's inherently negative. But the truth is that mental health, right? That phrase, mental health, includes both positive and challenging experience. It's an overall state of well-being, and it's not just the problems or the illness itself. And the best way I kind of, think about this is think of physical health, right? That's kind of an easy analogy. You can have really strong, physical health, really good physical health, but you can also have poor physical health as well too. And it's the same with mental health, that you can have really strong positive mental health, but you can also experience mental health challenges as well. So it's a spectrum. The second myth is that strong people don't struggle with mental health, and if you do, it means you're emotionally weak. We're now going into the stigma that we see very pervasive in our society. That is a myth, right? And the reason why it's a myth is because everyone experiences emotional challenges. If we think about just the state of our world, just all the stressors that I talked about in my mother's caregiving experience, everyone is going to experience challenges, with stress, challenges with life. And when you acknowledge those challenges, it doesn't mean that you're weak, but it points to awareness. It points to taking a step forward towards getting the support and help that you need. And the last thing is that if I ignore how I feel, it'll just go away. I just don't have time to focus on my mental health. This is very real. And I know I've been there as well too, where I've said some things like this, or I felt this way. But the truth is that the longer you allow mental health struggles to build up, the more difficult it becomes to address, and the more likely it is to lead to burnout. Stress is common. Everyone experiences stress. And stress at times can be good, right? If it's not extremely difficult stress, but it cannot be ignored over time. And this is where that support and coping strategies that we'll talk about later on come in to make that difference. And so, what are some of the factors that influence mental health? There are a lot. I just kind of wanted to throw it all out at you guys. But there are biological factors, genetics, brain chemistry, physical health, life experiences, trauma, chronic caregiving stress, transitions, social relationships and factors, families and community support. Isolation is a major thing. Environmental factors as well too, such as housing stability or instability, safety, and just neighborhood conditions. There's also economic factors, right? Financial stress, income stability, systemic and cultural factors, access to healthcare, mental health services. And then there's also lifestyle and personal factors such as sleep, rest, nutrition, physical health, and coping, and regulation. And all of these factors come together to impact your mental health, which then impacts how you show up, right? Our mental health is not something that is, improved or is challenged in isolation, but all of the factors of life, all of the different corners of our lives come together to impact our mental health wellness. And so with that being said, I want to just kind of throw out this phrase to us to really get us thinking about what I shared, which is, when rain stops and a flower wilts, do we blame the flower, right? It's the same thing with our mental health. When environmental factors such as financial stress, lack of social support, emotional regulation, systemic factors all come together and impacts our mental health, should we blame ourselves or should we blame that individual? And of course, the answer is no. But it's just that awareness that there are so many different things, especially when we talk about the caregiving experience, that can impact our wellness mentally, emotionally, and psychologically. And so let's talk about the caregiving experience. I want to frame this from the perspective of this invisible weight. I'll talk about some of the statistics, of caregiving, and talk about how the caregiving experience, while like a lot of you mentioned, it's fulfilling, it can be a form of walking in your purpose, but it also can be stressful, right? There's a balance to it. And so I'm going to throw out another question at you all. What makes the caregiving experience unique? Think about maybe individuals in your life that that are not in caregiving, that don't do caregiving work. What makes your experience unique? How has it been a experience or a journey for you that you're seeing as distinct from some of the other corners of our society? And I'll give us time, now that I know I can see the chat, I'll give us some time to drop a couple of things in the chat. Growth. Yes, there is a lot of growth that comes with caring for others. Thank you, Russia. Okay, I'm not seeing any others, but feel free to drop more in the chat as I keep going, and just be thinking about that question. I'll keep going. And what I, kind of put together in this diagram, okay, now I'm seeing some requires a lot of patience and flexibility, perseverance. Yes. These are, and of course, this is not all encompassing, but these, when you kind of look at the experiences that people have described, these are, some of the four major pillars, if you want to describe it as that, that comes to mind. There's the mental health aspect, there's the labor demands. It can be physically laborsome and time consuming, right? With caregiving. There's stressors and responsibilities, both in the caregiving process, but also for yourselves, and then support systems or lack thereof, right? And all of these come together to impact or to form or, sometimes if not addressed correctly, negatively impact the caregiving experience. And I want to emphasize that you are not weak, right? When these really major factors, mental health, labor demands, stressors, systems, come and they are confounding and they are unaddressed, it will and it may, let me say that, it may influence how you feel and show up. And that will then influence that overall caregiving experience. It is not easy, right, to care for others, whether it's, a family member, whether it's through a professional work. And when you look at all of these things together, as opposed to them being in isolation, you see that they really do impact, that caregiving experience. And so what I want to do is just share a video with us. And let me make sure I share my screen, or share my audio, just to kind of hear some stories of people who are in the caregiving space. And then I won't play the entire video. I'll just want to highlight some of what they say, and then we'll keep going.
I lost a relationship. I lost my job.
All of my friends went on with their lives.
I was going in the bathroom and crying.
3.3 million people in Ontario are caregivers. Ordinary people who are caring for family members, partners, friends, or neighbors with physical and mental health challenges.
I started my journey with caregiving 10 years ago, and it was with my sibling, and she had a mental illness. I know it's affected me. In me getting my own mental illness, do I put myself first, do I put my family first, or do I put my sister first?
Every day you're not only grieving for him, you're grieving for yourself at what you've lost, what the potential could have been.
Because the problem is that if you asked me at year one, Andrea, have you got all this under control? I would have told you, I sure do. I have got this. If you said to me at the end of year two, are you still okay? I would have told you, we're okay, we're doing fine. The reality was we weren't, but I'm not going to tell you because nobody wants to say, I don't know what I'm doing and I'm inadequate and I don't think I can handle this and I'm feeling really stressed.
And that's when I fall apart, when I don't know what to do.
Yes, heavy, but I think really important as we continue. I wanted to, before going into that invisible weight and sharing some statistics, really highlight what they were sharing. And of course, this is based in Ontario, but I think the general experiences of caregiving are the same regardless of where you are, in our society. And yes, I see Bridget saying I can relate all too well. Thank you so much for sharing. And so let's talk about this invisible weight, right? I like data because it helps kind of ground the work that we do. And it also can help us understand that we are not alone in what we're experiencing, right? 63 million adults, nearly 1 in 4, are family caregivers. And I will share the resource where I pulled these numbers from, because they did an entire amazing study on caregiving in the United States. And they also found that 11.2 million caregivers are both unpaid and provide both unpaid and paid care. And the way that they broke it down varied in that this could look like someone who was maybe getting paid to do caregiving work, but they also at some time had to do unpaid work outside of the parameters of maybe the salary that they agreed upon. And it also includes people who are just unpaid doing caregiving work, right? 61% are women and 38% are men. And nearly 24% of people care for multiple people, 20% more for two, and then 4% 3 or more. And when we talk about this invisible weight, right, with caregiving, it's that you maybe on someone's physical appearance cannot tell that they are caring for one or two or three or more people, but there are different weights that we carry that are invisible to the human eye, but really impact our mental health, right? And for our next activity, and you can, share this in the chat, you can also maybe just write this on a piece of paper, or you can even take this and do this sometime else. What I would love for us to kind of reflect on is our caregiving experience. And you can write, text, or call out, something that you carry in caregiving that people don't easily see, right? This is an opportunity to reflect on your experience. What is something that, a weight, maybe a burden, a thought that you carry that people don't easily see from your physical appearance? And I'll give us a couple of times to either drop that in the chat, or maybe you can even write it down and use it to reflect later on. Loneliness and fear. Thank you so much. Fear. Yes. Thank you all for being so vulnerable in this space. Fear. Unknown future. Yes. Anticipatory grief. Wow. Yes. Thank you for sharing. Grief. Yes. We'll talk about grief later on. Yes. These are things that with the human eye, you can't see. Loss of joy. You can't see it, right? But these are the weights that our caregivers are carrying. Thank you all so much for sharing. And so with that in mind, transition, not being seen when needed to be seen. Yes. Let's transition to identifying mental health challenges, right? This is where we're going to really highlight practical things that we can do to identify that we are, in that space of experiencing poor mental health. When we talk about identifying mental health challenges, there are three ways that we do that, right? Through the words that we say, the thoughts that we have, and our behaviors. And I'd like to ground this in just, sharing that maybe you are, someone who supports caregivers, or you're someone who is a caregiver and you're looking for ways to identify challenges. These all can work for either of those, groups of individuals, right? You're looking at what are words that you or people that you're serving are saying. What are the thoughts that they might be, that you might be having, or that they might express that they've had, and what are their behaviors? So words we say out loud, right? These are some of the phrases that, can come up. I'm just tired all the time. I can't keep up with everything. I feel overwhelmed. I'm fine. I should be able to handle this. I don't have time for myself, and nothing I do feels like enough. Even as I share this, right, especially when we're talking about mental health, and caregiving, it's important to note that the caregiving experience can lead to tiredness. It can lead to feelings of overwhelmedness. When we talk about mental health challenges, it's speaking of when what is common or normal, right, which is just common in our society, what is common now goes to a place where it's negatively impacting that individual. So these phrases of I'm just tired all the time, it can be common, right? Because caregiving can be tiresome. But when we start seeing and hearing that this phrase comes up often, that it comes with, this sense of hopelessness, it comes with, other things that we'll talk about later on, actions, thoughts that we're having, it can point to mental health challenges, right? The next thing is, there's an activity. Okay, I think I put an activity after each of these. Complete the sentence. If I don't do it, then, right? Think about the thoughts that we have. What I'm trying to get at with this sentence is, are there things that we say or thoughts that we have that point to, some type of negative internal dialogue that we're having, right? So think about your caregiving experience, and then think, with this sentence, if I don't do this, then this will happen. What's the first thing that comes to mind? Is it negative? Is it positive? Is it something that points to hopelessness? Who will do it? Okay, no one will. So I'm sensing this kind of like, I have to carry it all, kind of like this Superman, Superwoman, feeling of I have to carry it all, right? And so this is just an activity it won't get done. Yes, these are awesome. Thank you all for sharing, right? These are sometimes, if they're negative, unhelpful thoughts that we have that can point to the fact that we're having challenges. I will let people down. I'm failing. That's real. Yes, thank you all for sharing. And so things we think, this can be constant worrying, perceived inadequacy or failure. difficulty focusing or making decisions, negative self-talk, feeling stuck, overwhelmed, or drained, overthinking everyday decisions, expecting worst case outcomes, and feeling hopeless or extreme exhaustion. And again, caregiving is difficult. There will be times, because again, we mentioned that stress is common. There will be times where you might have worry, you might have racing thoughts. When we talk about mental health challenges, it's now going into a place where it's impacting your ability to function. It's impacting, your sense of hope and sense of joy in your life, right? And then lastly, behaviors, what others might notice. Have you or others noticed any changes? Is there a pattern of withdrawing from others, isolating, changes in sleep, changes in appetite, irritability or short-temperedness, avoiding responsibilities or tasks, loss of interest in things that you used to enjoy, and increased reliance on unhealthy coping, right? And again, these are the behaviors that we should make note of in ourselves or in others that point to, the possibility that we're experiencing mental health challenges. And so this is the truth. And this is the difficult truth. But sometimes people won't see you, right? We're talking about this invisible weight. Sometimes people, because everyone is busy, everyone is doing a million things, right? Sometimes people won't see the weight of what our caregivers are carrying. But the hope is, and this is where we're gonna, begin to kind of talk about later on practicals that we can do. The hope is that you do have the power to advocate and speak up for yourself. Not all hope is lost, right? There are things that you can do to pull yourself out of that place of grief, to pull yourself out of that place of hopelessness, fear of the future, right? There is something that you can do. And so when we don't address mental health challenges, it can lead to disconnection and isolation, prolonged stress and anxiety, emotional exhaustion, and what we'll talk about next, burnout. Burnout is real. Burnout is something that a lot of people, experience, and sometimes we experience it. I've been there and we don't even know that we're experiencing it. But we're going to talk about burnout, what it is, and signs that we are experiencing it. So what is burnout? It's the state of severe emotional, physical, and mental exhaustion caused by prolonged, unmanaged stress. Again, that's why we started with talking about how that myth of, I don't have time, I just can't address my mental health is really detrimental, because when we are in that state of heightened stress, heightened, negative emotions, and we prolong it and it becomes severe, it can lead to burnout. And so let's talk about the data on caregiver stress. Nearly 2/3 of caregivers reported moderate to high emotional stress, and 45% report moderate to high physical strain. 24% of caregivers report feeling alone, right? We were speaking about social support before. And caregivers who report no choice in becoming a caregiver, which is 56%, have experienced worse mental health, worse physical strain, and a lower sense of purpose. This is the reality that a lot of our caregivers are facing, right? And when we allow these things to confound and to be unaddressed over time, it can lead to burnout. And so I want to throw this question out. Has anyone here ever experienced burnout? And if you have, how did you recognize it? Because I know for myself, I've been in that place of burnout, but I didn't know it. Hindsight is 2020. But have you ever experienced burnout, and how did you recognize it? And I'll give us some time to drop those responses in the chat. What were some signs and symptoms maybe that you identified that you were experiencing burnout? I was really snappy, right? Irritability, yes, that is a sign of burnout. Somatic symptoms in my body and behaviors, yes, that is also a sign of burnout. Thank you for sharing. Anger and tears without control, yes, thank you for sharing. Physical decline. Yes, burnout is not just, your mental and emotional health, but it also shows up physically as well too. Thank you all for sharing, and you can feel free to keep dropping those in the chat. And so what are some signs of burnout, right? Let's talk about the emotional and mental signs first. That feeling of overwhelmedness. Thank you. Resentment. Yes. Irritability, emotional numbness and detachment, feelings of guilt or resentment, loss of motivation and sense of purpose, right? Mental signs can include difficulty concentrating, constant worry and racing thoughts, feeling like you're not doing enough, negative or self-critical thinking, and forgetfulness or brain fog, right? And then there's also physical and behavior. Chronic fatigue, even after you rest. So let's say you get your 8 hours of sleep in, but you still feel tired waking up. That's a sign of burnout. Headache, or body tension, changes in sleep, changes in appetite, getting sick more often, and then behavioral, withdrawing from others or isolating, avoiding responsibilities, losing interest in activities you once enjoyed, increased irritability, someone mentioned that, and neglecting your own needs. All of these things, right, point to, okay, Deborah mentioned something, grinding my teeth at night. Yes, those physical, signs of tension and stress in our body. These are all signs of burnout. Burnout can be intense, right? It can be prolonged, and we can be in that place of burnout for so long that it ends up showing in the care that we're giving. It ends up showing in how we show up at work, in our community, in our family, right? And it's really important to be aware of those signs so that before we even get to that place of burnout, we can really, implement those practical strategies that we'll talk about later on to ensure that we don't get there in the first place. Burnout is not something that, is mandatory. Like, everyone has to experience it. There are ways that we can avoid getting burnt out. And so this quote that I'll share, burnout is not weakness. It's your body's way of saying enough, right? People talked about physical things that show up, right? It's our body literally responding to the external stressors to say, enough, I need a break, I need rest, I need a change, right? And so let's talk about the 3 unspoken G's of caregiving. And as I talk about the first 2 G's, I want you to identify 1 to 2 practical things that you can do to implement in your life today, right? Because we want to, also provide that call to action. Yes, we've talked about the challenges and the data, and it can be really, doom and gloom, but there are practical things that you can do to improve your mental health. And so the first G is grief. A lot of you mentioned this in the chat, grief. This is real. And preparing for this, I loved how grief is not just related to the loss of someone, but a couple other things that I'll touch on. So grief in caregiving is the emotional response to loss that can occur not only after someone dies, but also in response to changes in a person's health, abilities, roles, or future expectations. It can include grief for a loved one's potential life, the person they once were, or the life you envisioned. Yes, Bridget writes, grieving my old life. It can appear as sadness, frustration, or emotional numbness. And this is really important because I know with mental health, especially in the caregiving space, there's a lot of stigma, especially when we're dealing with caregiving where, the individual is, still alive. They have not passed on, right? And people might say things like, well, why are you experiencing frustration or sadness? They're still alive. You still have your loved one. But this, comprehensive definition of grief points to that you can also grieve a potential life. You can grieve, what your future might have been, absent of caregiving, right? That is also valid forms of grief. And so how can we navigate grief, right? How can we navigate this state of grief? And I want to always context and preface when it comes to grief, it's not one size fits all. There is no magic equation that you can put in, give to someone, magic, steps that they can take to overcome grief. It's a process that, you walk yourself through, and it can show up in many ways. And so the first thing can be naming what you're feeling instead of suppressing it. That, pattern that a lot of us have of suppressing what we're feeling, I'm just going to keep going, I'm just going to keep working, I'm just going to keep pretending everything is okay, actually confounds the feelings that we're having in that place of grief. Allow yourself to grieve in your own time and in your own way. Don't allow the stigma of what people might say, what society is trying to make you feel, to hinder your grief journey, right? Write your thoughts and your emotions down. Put pen and paper to it. You can take daily short check-ins with yourself, use calming routines. You can set boundaries for emotional space. This is really important. If there is a place or an activity or a person that can be triggering, in that place of grief, set those boundaries, right? Say, put your feet down and say, I'm going to limit myself from engaging in those things until I've got into that comfortable place again in my life. Connect with supportive people or groups. We'll talk about at the end our older adults program at MHAMD, a group of individuals that you can connect with to get the support that you need, and allow your mixed emotions without judgment. Meaning when, in the morning you're feeling high, but then by afternoon you're feeling low again. That's okay. Don't judge yourself. Don't be hard on yourself, right? Remember, you're navigating grief, the loss of something. So that's the first G. The next G is guilt. And I think a couple of us mentioned that in the chat as well too, guilt. And what is guilt in caregiving? It's the emotional experience of feeling like you're not doing enough, not doing it well enough, or not meeting the needs of your loved one as fully as you believe you should. And it's common in caregiving. And I really want to emphasize this, that guilt is common even when you are doing your best. Even when you are giving it your 100 and sometimes even your 150% to that individual or individuals that you're taking care of, guilt can still show up, right? And it's because, again, we talked about before, those unhelpful thoughts that we have that show up even as we are caregiving. And so how do we navigate guilt? Remind yourself that you're doing your best. Focus on what's possible and not perfect. Replace self-blame with self-compassion. Acknowledge what you're doing. Accept that rest is necessary. Walk through guilt with someone you trust, right? Getting connected to community and writing down your care and effort that you are doing and letting go of comparison of others. In our social media age and in our society just generally, it's so easy to compare ourselves to others and say, well, that person seems to be doing great, so I'm doing a horrible job. We don't want to compare ourselves to others because it can impact our mental health, right? And then the final G, right? We're going to end on a high note. I know we've talked about a lot of some of the challenges, but I want to end on a high note, which is growth in caregiving. And I think someone even mentioned this in the chat. Growth is possible, right? And growth can be and is a part of caregiving. And what is it? It's the process of adapting, learning, and building resilience through the caregiving experience. While caregiving can be challenging, it can also lead to greater self-awareness, emotional strength, and a deeper sense of purpose over time. It does not mean the absence of stress or difficulty, but it's the ability, despite challenges, despite the stressors, to live healthier and more sustainably with support, reflection, and coping tools. Growth is possible. It is possible to be in that place of burnout, to be in that place of grief, to be in that place of hopelessness, and to grow out of that, grow into, learning more about caregiving, grow in your ability to caregive, grow in your ability to help others who might be where you once were, right? And so how do we get there? Some of the things for managing stress first is to prioritize tasks, right? I know, and I have a bad habit of doing this. I will write down like 20 things that I want to do, and because it's literally impossible to do the 20 things in a day, I'll get overwhelmed and I say, oh, I messed up, I did horrible. But growth points to, prioritizing at least 1 to 2 top tasks that you can, practically and realistically complete for the day. Stepping outside or changing rooms for a quick reset, right? Setting phone alarms for breaks or check-ins. Accepting help. This is a huge one. Sometimes we feel like we just have to do it all ourselves, but you can accept help for meals or errands or transportation. Building a small daily routine, prepping for what you can the night before, and taking a few moments of quiet time before or after caregiving task. Let's talk about reducing isolation. Isolation really does impact our mental health. And some of the ways that we can overcome that is through checking in with one person each day, right? Maybe you can identify at least one person that can be, a check-in person where you can text or call or even do a quick visit with them. You can join a caregiver support group, whether virtually or in person. You can combine errands with social interaction. So, when you are out doing errands, integrating some type of brief social interaction just to get that community component. Let one person know how you're really doing, as opposed to saying what a lot of us say, I'm fine, I'm well, everything's going great. Accept offers to sit with your loved one so you can step out, right? That speaks to getting the help that we need, accepting that help, and staying connected through small moments and not long conversations. With caregiving, it can literally feel impossible, right? To get in those long conversations, those long check-ins, but it can be something quick. Staying connected through a text, through a call, call through just a quick, brief interaction to reduce that isolation. And so this is where I kind of want to end. It doesn't matter where you were yesterday. Healing, support, and growth are possible today, right? It doesn't matter how, all your entire caregiving experience up until now has looked like. There is hope for growth. There is hope for healing. There is hope to come out of that, state of hopelessness and to really step into resilience. And I want to end with talking about, my mother's caregiving experience again, which is what I started with. I mentioned the stress, the geographical distance, her family, she had to support us, her children, right? The physical demands, the grief. But I also want to mention that she was able to, walk in joy again, healing again, resilience again, hope again, strength again, peace again. And she was able to see that even though she had lost her mom, even though she had gone through those years of caregiving, and really giving herself to the point of burnout, she experienced a better tomorrow, and she is. And my mom today is vibrant. She's resilient. She actually uses her story to help others in her community, all of our other extended family that are also doing caregiving, because she was able to, stay the course, and work towards that joy and that healing that really helps her in the long run. And so I know I shared a lot. I know that these slides will be shared at the end of our conference today. I just wanted to end with sharing about our older adults program of MHAMD. This is a program that addresses the needs of people in our community when it comes to older adults and caregiving. We talk about education advocacy, all in regards to mental wellness and the aging process. You can visit us at mhamd.org. And some of the resources that we provide are Engage With. This is a skills training focused on older adults, and our Vibrant Minds, small groups as well too. And we have a plethora of trainings, webinars that we do, and resources completely free that we provide to the community about older adults, about caregiving. We do a lot of things related to programming, both for, our older adults and for the people that take care of us. And so these are just some of my references that you can reference once these slides are shared out. I just want to say thank you so much again for this time. And just to emphasize, that the core message is that there is hope. Not all hope is lost. And so I know we have a couple of moments left. I will pass it back to our coordinators today if there are any questions. If there's time, I'm free to take questions as well too. Okay, I see Bridget saying, I have a question. Yes.
Bridget, you're unmuted if you'd like to go ahead and present your question.
Oh, thank you. I'm sorry. I was typing. So one of my struggles is just feeling appreciated for all the things that I do. Um, I don't know. And I found this on one of my girlfriend's websites. Like she's a care provider. And so I was like, oh my God, I need this. But how do you get the appreciation and the thank you that you never get for all that you sacrifice? I mean, I don't know how to put it in words, but I get choked up about it. Not that I'm looking for like applause or anything, but sometimes you just feel like, am I enough? And I could be doing other things, but I choose to show up for my partner.
Yeah.
And how do you get that appreciation that you don't get? You know what I mean? Like,
Yes. Yes.
I don't know how to put in words, but thank you for
Yes.
unmuting me.
Yes, and thank you for sharing and for being vulnerable. And I think, the first thing that comes to mind is sometimes that appreciation is not going to come from, people around us or even the person that you're caregiving, but it's going to have to come from within in the sense of what can you do to, recognize and be aware of the extent of the work that you're doing. That's why in on one of the slides I mentioned, writing down the work that you're doing, you reflecting on that is able to, help you recognize like I'm doing a lot. And while it might not be getting that thank you that it's that we want, right? And it's okay that we want it. It can help us kind of reconcile those feelings because sometimes people, just don't recognize it. They don't see it. It could also be a conversation, depending on the nature of the relationship. It could be a conversation that could be held to say, and of course the phrasing will vary on the nature of that relationship. But just letting them know, like, I'm really thankful, or, I've been really present, and I just want to let you know that I've been aware, or present, sorry, for this time. I've been doing, these different things and not coming off in a, you have to thank me kind of way, but just letting them know, like, I've been here and I'm committed to this work. And hopefully through the consistent, showing up, letting them know, the work that you've been doing, the time that you've put in, that will help kind of lead them to that place of recognizing more the work that you do. And then the last thing that comes to mind is sometimes people express thank you differently. I know in my family, us verbally saying thank you can be hard, but in action, they might do something to show that they're thankful. And so recognizing what is the way that this individual is showing gratitude and gratefulness and kind of highlighting that as well too. But yes, I want to echo what was shared. We see you, we're standing with you. And I know that it's not easy. And sometimes that, appreciation and that strength that we're looking for has to come from within. So thank you so much for asking that question. I don't know if there are any other questions or anything that anyone wants to share. I know that this is a really, open, vulnerable space. So.
I just want to add to what you said, Roni, too, and maybe this is a good segue into our next presentation. What you were referring to, Bridget, about not feeling appreciated. And like Roni was saying, sometimes you have to like kind of look internally to find some of that, but also maybe finding your community of other caregivers, I think can sometimes help to make you feel appreciated, because if you talk to other caregivers and they know what you're going through, I think sometimes that can be helpful too, even if you're not getting it from your care partner, getting it from other caregivers who recognize it can be helpful. Yeah.
That is very true.
Yes, so thank you so much. I'm not seeing any other questions. Thank you again to the team for putting this together, and I will pass it back over to you all.
Well, thank you, Roni, so much. This was an excellent presentation. Really appreciate you being here and your time, all this wonderful information. I think it brings awareness of what a lot of us as caregivers are experiencing. It puts the words to things maybe we've been feeling and didn't know exactly what it was. And I think it brought a lot of, like I said, awareness and attention to that. I really love that you gave us the opportunity to interact with you and to share with everyone. And so that we see that we're not alone, and that it's so important. And I felt that in this brief time that we had together, it was so powerful because we were able to share that and we were able to be seen and we were able to be heard today. So thank you so much again. Really appreciate you and all the work that you do. Next up, as we're segueing into our next component of today's presentation, is we're going to focus on community. And so today I would like to introduce Yvonne Yench, who will be speaking for us on this next component. Yvonne, licensed social worker, has been employed with Baltimore County Department of Aging for 32 years. Yvonne is the Senior Center social worker and manager of the Center Connection program. Yvonne has many years of experience in social work field, working in child protective services, hospital social work, adult medical daycare, senior centers, and with seniors in the Center Connection program who need support to maximize their senior center experience. Welcome, Yvonne.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, let me get my PowerPoint here. Let's see. All right. I'm not the best here. Get the right view. Sorry. Oh, here we go. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so I think, in building on what Ronnie talked about in mental health, when we talk about community and, what we need as caregivers, support groups can really be a tool in our caregiving basket, I guess, to give us that sense of community and help us not feel alone. So, sorry about that. When we look at what is a support group, the basic definition, it's a group of people, common experiences and concerns who provide emotional and moral support for one another. And this can be around, general caregiving, specific diagnosis, whether dementia, people dealing with strokes, Parkinson's, grief. There's, a lot of different support groups out there. And I'm just curious if anyone, any of the participants have joined a support group, have participated in a support group. I'm not sure. Just interested if we've had anybody that's actually participated in a support group. And I can't see the chat or anything, so I don't know. So, in a study, a 2025 report on caregiving, they actually found that about 65% of caregivers have not participated in a group. They may be aware of a group, but they have not participated. And support groups really are they can be the voice of people who have walked in your shoes. Bridget was talking about, kind of feeling appreciated in that, but caregivers, they're kind of walking in those shoes as well. So they understand those challenges, and maybe, the loved one, they're looking at it from their perspective. And, sometimes even, friends and family don't understand what you're dealing with on a day-to-day basis. So there are a number of different types of support groups, mutual support groups. These are, can be peer-led, they can have facilitators. And this is really just kind of, you share whatever information. A lot of people are aware of 12-step self-help programs. These are, for Alcohol Anonymous, gamblers, and there are support groups for families within each of these self-help groups. Therapy groups are more professionally led, and usually a professional will bring those together, usually, around specific conditions, whether, anxiety or things like that. And then, we have the in-person online groups, and we'll share some resources towards the end about, some of, what you want to think about when you're looking at groups. And, these may be facilitated, some may be more structured. You may have to register, they may be more educational. So there's a lot of variety out there. Okay. So one of the things that we want to think about is, as caregivers, you do sometimes feel lonely, and, you have those daily challenges, as the previous speaker talked about. There's the increased, caregivers report increased emotional stress and depression. 43% are sole providers. 88%, say they need more help. So really, if you're feeling any of these things, overwhelmed, isolated, struggling, needing information, but not knowing where to go or what, that's where the support group can really be that, safe space to share those experiences. Know that you're not alone in that journey. It also can help promote healthy aging. You can kind of feel encouraged and uplifted. And, when during those times when, maybe you're feeling down or, oh, I'm not sure what I'm doing. So it can give you some of that validation. When we think about support groups, I think it's nice to kind of think about it as, a tool for self-care. And, self-care is really the practice of, taking action to preserve or improve our own health. As caregivers, a lot of times we don't want to prioritize our own health. We feel that, we have to take care of that person. But if we're not taking care of ourselves, it can impact our health. And, and it's impossible to do everything. And, if you're struggling, this is one way of in feeling out of control. This is one way of taking control to do something that's actually going to benefit you and help you. And, when people think about support groups, a lot of different words come to mind, connections, hope, empathy, listening. It can really be a good space for to share and also to help yourself. Okay, so when we talk about the benefits, there's a lot of benefits, and I don't know if for those of you who've participated in a group, if you wanted to share maybe a benefit that you got from attending a support group, or a word that comes to mind when you think about support groups. I can't see anybody in the chat, but okay.
So,
sorry.
Yeah, hi, Yvonne. So it looks like two folks have attended before. They mentioned the Binti Circle, and then words that came to mind for support groups is necessary and connection.
Okay, great. So one of the benefits of support groups is that emotional support, the place where you can kind of share your feelings, good, bad, and ugly. Because as you go through the caregiver journey, sometimes we feel good about what we're doing. Sometimes maybe, we get upset with ourselves about maybe how we handled something. And it's also a feeling of, you're with other people who understand, and you're not the only one. They may have those feelings. Yeah, and Kathleen talks about being seen. There's mutual understanding that, everyone recognizes that, the challenges, and you're going through those things. The encouragement, I did a brief, we did a kind of little bit of a little group with caregivers in the fall caregiver conference. And it was really good because we had some people that were new caregivers, some that were more experienced, and the knowledge of those individuals who had been through that journey and what they could share to the people who were starting out new in that journey was invaluable. And it was very, very helpful for those, because when you have these groups, you have people with diverse experiences. They can be very creative in how they've addressed issues, and can give you some ideas that, maybe you haven't thought about. And that's actually what happened when we put together these groups at the caregiver conference in the fall. Sometimes it also can help, sometimes the feelings of maybe guilt that you may feel and that it's okay to, take care of yourself and, prioritize your own health. Because if we don't do that, we're going to struggle in being able to take care of our loved one as well. It also can empower you to, just learn new skills, feel more confident in your caregiving. Try something and come back and get validation and feedback from others. That's great that you tried that, or that encouragement to, set that boundary or set that limit, or reach out to another family member, a sibling or whatever, and say, hey, can you help me? Sometimes it can give you that confidence, and you can grow as a caregiver, and because you're getting that support and sense of community from others. And also learning, how have they managed their stress? Do they have any special techniques? How do you find the time to set, you know um, to do whatever you need to do? Are there tools? Are there apps? Are there resources that I don't know about? Those are shared during support groups. Very practical solutions. How do you handle when you have to, you're concerned about someone's driving and you have to take the keys away? Some people disable the engine, some people hide the registration, just practical tips like that. Coping skills, how do you handle your stress? Well, I've tried meditation, or I journal. I find taking a walk, little things like that. It can just kind of keep you going during this process. Resources, a lot of times too, we don't know what to expect, and caregiving, day to day is, it's different day to day, good, bad, so, but also when you're dealing with different things, it's like what to expect as you move through that process. And that's where people with their experiences can share some of that, so that you can maybe prepare. What, should I be thinking about? What resources should I maybe be investigating? Because, we're going to need to maybe make some changes in the living situation, or, the financial situation. I have money for this, but now I may need additional resources. So those are some very concrete types of things that can come out of attending a support group. A lot of caregivers, when they talk about, support groups, they are looking for that communication, talking to others, caregiver tips, support, and wanting that sense of community. And when we think about community, really, what is a community? It's people with like situations that kind of interact, that support one another, that are open to listening, empathetic. Those are some of the things that can provide strength, can help with us feeling maybe more resilient as a caregiver, growth, maybe give us hope as well, and understand that, and also finding sometimes the humor, the taking the moments and treasuring those moments, in that caregiving journey. Just a wealth of different support that we can get from that. And then really just sometimes just feeling that more comfortable in your role. A lot of times, you know, when we're doing it alone, we question ourselves. We think about, are we doing this the right way? You know, where are we going? We don't always take time and think about what we need to do, and what can help us to feel more comfortable or in our role. And that's what the groups can do, is really provide that support, and maybe make you feel a little bit more comfortable as you go through your journey. I'm just trying to keep it okay. So I'm hoping this will work. I'm not good with embedding videos, but this is just a really brief testimonial of a caregiver and the benefit that he got from attending a support group. So hopefully this will work. Can you? Oh, you can't hear it, can you? All right, well, I'm sorry.
Yvonne, it looks like the sound may be off at the top of the video. Can you click that?
Can you hear it now?
Can you turn
it
up? There you go.
really compounds daily through emotions, through grief. What inspired me to sign up for the program is that I feel that I needed to have more support. I feel being surrounded by other like-minded people helps me feel grounded, builds up a foundation to be a better caregiver. The advice I would give to families and caregivers is to communicate, share some meditations together, build a support group.
Did you hear that?
We did.
We did, yes.
Okay, I apologize. I have lost my ability to move my slides. I don't know what's happening here. Sorry. I am not getting.
You clicked into the video feed. If you click back onto your screen, see if that will allow you to advance your slide.
Yeah, I'm not even seeing the whole WebEx thing. Sorry about this.
If you can stop sharing and then come back, would that be possible?
I will try. Okay. Sorry about this. I apologize.
No need. We all understand how hard it is sometimes.
Okay. All right. All right. So I hope you were able to get a little bit from that. I wasn't able to hear it myself too much. So hopefully you got something out of that. Okay. So now, okay. Now it's not moving.
It's still playing the video, so you may need to.
But it's not advancing. It's not allowing me to advance my slides. Oh, there we go. Okay. I apologize. Today, I guess, is not my technical day. So when we think about joining a support group, you know, some things you might want to consider. You know, is it a general caregiver support group, or are you looking for something that's more focused on a specific health condition? You know, are you, you know, caregiving for someone who has had a stroke, or maybe has Parkinson's, dementia, something like that? You know, what specifically are you looking for? You know, sometimes when we're dealing with a specific health condition, it's more beneficial and helpful to participate in a group, because you're going to get more specific information about that disease process, you know, how things change, some of the struggles that are unique to that health condition. So those are some things you want to think about. You know, can you attend an in-person or online group? You know, sometimes it comes down to time. A lot of online groups, sometimes there might be more flexibility in times that they're offered, or it's easier to kind of pop into something like that than to commit to an in-person group. However, an in-person group can be beneficial because, you're actually getting that even more sense of community because you're seeing them, you're chatting before or after the group. Maybe you're making connections and we'll get together for lunch or things like that. That sometimes in-person groups can tend to maybe lead into more of a personal connection, that sometimes people are looking for that, particularly if you're a caregiver who maybe doesn't have a lot of support, a lot of family, friends. You may want something more in person to have that, in person, person to person contact. you know is it is it a situation, a space where I feel safe? Is it confidential? Yeah, all support groups, there are kind of rules and boundaries, and that should be something that when you go, that is explained, that, kind of the rules, being respectful, that this information is confidential, that, people are, it's okay for them to share that. So, you want to think about that. Is it a peer supported or led by a professional? Do you want a group that maybe is going to give you more educational information, or by, also by someone who maybe as a professional in that field, maybe has specific knowledge that they can help facilitate and add to the group versus, peers who've kind of been through the journey in a different way. um, you know, does the day and time work, with your schedule? And also finding the time, also looking at it as a commitment, something on your calendar that I'm choosing to do this for myself because this is what I need as a caregiver. Some groups do have, you know, sometimes you might be concerned when you're talking about in person with respite or that. There have been some groups sometimes where there's groups where, for the caregiver and then also for the individual at the same time, that is possible. Some places have been able to provide respite. So those are some things you want to consider. Some groups are time limited. I know when I worked in the hospital, sometimes we would do groups, whether it was for brain tumor, stroke, cancer, whatever, that maybe would be more time limited. You'd have to register in advance, whereas you can just drop in at any time and you don't really have to register. This is when the group's offered. You can come and go. You're not required to attend, and it's much more flexible. So, those are some things that you might want to consider when, you're thinking about choosing a support group. Okay.
So Yvonne, in the chat, someone looked like Miss Leslie. She put in True Alta provides great support group resources also.
Yes, and we're going to talk about that actually. So when we look about, what are some of the groups and resources that we have available. So on the Baltimore County website, the Caregiver program has a list of support groups, and these are general support groups as well. Support groups for diabetes or stroke, Parkinson's, things like that. The Alzheimer's Association has a list of support groups, and these are in person, they're virtual, and also specialty groups, for the sandwich generation, frontal temporal dementia, specific groups for different communities, Korean community, the LGBTQ plus community, Latino community, people with early onset Alzheimer's and that. So there are, you know, sometimes very specific groups that, you know, can also meet those needs. And then I listed NAMI here, which is for individuals dealing with mental health. They actually have some family support groups for families caring for individuals with mental health illnesses. And, you know, those are, they have some virtual and they also have some in-person groups. And then, yes, True Alta. So this is something through the Baltimore County Caregiver program, and it's a wonderful resource. And you can see on the slide, you know, some of the different support groups that they have. So you can see there's, you know, caring for a parent. It's, you know, a 4-week session. Then there's some that are, it looks like more drop-in, but anonymous, where the cameras are off, so you don't have to have your, you know, have your picture. So there's a lot of variety of topics that, you know, you can see here: living with early stage dementia, you know, myth of selfishness. So just a lot of wonderful resources. And to connect with that, this is the information which I know they'll be sharing with all of you. And, you know, I encourage you to really look into that, because I think because of the volume and the groups that they have, you may be able to you know, plug into something that could fit into your time. So it really is a wonderful resource for everyone. So that's pretty much what I have to talk about as far as support groups. And I guess I didn't know if anyone had any questions. You know, really, they can be an invaluable resource. Part of, you know, your care team. When we think about, you know, who is part of our care team, those support groups, that can be part of our care team. And, you know, they can provide a lot of creative ideas, solutions, you know, and how to handle things. I can remember a group that I led years ago, and one of the caregivers shared her mother had dementia, and she was, you know, struggling sometimes with like what she wanted to wear and things like that. And so, you know, she shared that she basically lets her wear the same thing every day. She washes it each night, because she was able to, rather than making it a battle of, okay, well, you have to wear this tomorrow, whatever, it would be a battle every day. So she just let it go, and she just wore the same outfit every day. The daughter just washed it, you know, every day or either every other day. And so we had no battles. And so that was an area where she shared with others. And sometimes we don't think about that and helping to kind of, you know, pick battles and that, but that was something that she had shared with the other caregivers. And, you know, those are very, very creative supports. I think somebody asked about something in Harford County. I'm not sure about support groups in Harford County, but if you actually call our MAP number, they could get you connected with the Harford County Aging MAP number, and you might be able to, you know, find out that way if they have any. I do know that the Alzheimer's Association, their list, they provide a list for the whole state as to what's available as far as groups in the list that I shared with about the Alzheimer's Association. So most counties are going to have some groups. There may be a limited amount. There may not be as many options, but, you know, particularly post-COVID, there's a lot more online support groups, and, you know, which in some ways allows people to have a little bit more flexibility than having to make that commitment, maybe finding someone to provide respite and, you know, getting out of the house and that. So there is a little bit more flexibility and hopefully the ability for caregivers to get more support through that online community. And in the study that they did on caregivers, they actually found that a high percentage of caregivers were participating in support groups through, you know, Facebook, through online, even more so than in person. But, you know, each of you, you know, are looking for different things as you go through this journey. And some of you may find that it's more beneficial to do something in person versus online, or, you know, maybe even both at times. You know, a lot is what else, what other support system do you have? What else, you know, what is that caregiving community that you have? And, you know, for those that may not have a lot of support, that in person can give you that. So I see Kathleen's putting the website for Harford County and for that. So I really encourage all of you who maybe haven't maybe tried a support group to think about it. The benefits just for you as a caregiver can really help, you know, in looking at when you talk about your mental health with some of those feelings of isolation, of being alone, of, you know, struggling and, you know, am I doing this right? Or where do I go from here? They can provide some of those answers that you need, and understand that you know, you are not alone and that you do have that community. And these are the references that I used, and I didn't add a thank you slide, but thank you for your time. And you know, I wish you all well in your caregiving journey as you move forward. And thank you again.
Thank you, Yvonne. All right, I'm going to actually, since Yvonne was talking about TrueAlta, I'm going to, before our next presentation, I'm going to share some slides that go into a little bit more detail about TrueAlta, so that if anyone is interested, you can learn a little bit more. Just bear with me 1 second. Okay, does that look good for everybody?
Looks good, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so like Yvonne said, we offer through the Caregiver Support Program, we offer access for free to a program called TrueAlta. So this is a completely online program, and they offer support groups, they offer education, lots of different styles of both of those as well, which I'll go into a little bit more. That QR code takes you to the registration page for it, or you can use that website. I will say as well, once you go to register, it'll ask questions about whether you or the person you're caring for lives in Baltimore County, because that connects you to the TrueAlta through our program. But there are other counties that offer TrueAlta as well. So if you're joining us from another county, just keep in mind, you may still be able to join TrueAlta. You would just do it through your own county. And if you're not sure, or if you have questions about it, even if you're not in Baltimore County, you can always reach out to us, and I'll put our information in the chat again. So, like I said, they have lots of different types of ways that they support caregivers. So one of them is support groups. So you can see on the screen here, this shows a little screenshot of some of the upcoming groups. There are lots of different topics. Some of the support groups are very specific topics, like you can see here, navigating dementia behaviors, the art of staying safe. So some of them are very specific. And then some of them are more just sort of general support groups where you can join, and there's always somebody leading the group. So they have a few different professionals that lead the groups. They're really engaging. They ask a lot of really good questions, and there's a few different styles. So Yvonne had kind of mentioned this as well, but there are support groups you can join where everybody's cameras are off, everybody's mics are off, and you're just participating through the chat. So similar to like what we've been doing today, where you can just type in the chat. So if that's something you're more comfortable with, and maybe you're not ready to necessarily be seen and have to take your mic off and all of that, you can join those kind of support groups where you're just participating through the chat. If you're looking for something a little more engaging though, where you can really interact face-to-face with people, virtually face-to-face with people, then they do offer those types of support groups as well, where cameras are on, mics are on, and everyone's really interacting. So, different styles based on what you're kind of looking for. And then they also offer things like book clubs. They have educational webinars as well. Lots of different types of events that they offer. Let's see. In addition to that, they have different learning opportunities. So if webinars and videos, these hour-long videos aren't maybe not necessarily your style, or maybe you're looking for something a little quicker, easier, these little kind of bite-size educational pieces are available as well. So you can see when you're going through and you pull up all the different educational pieces, it'll even tell you at the bottom there where it says 2 minutes about how long it would take somebody to read it or to watch the video. So these are, again, lots of different topics. And I don't think I mentioned at the top, I should have mentioned, when you first create an account on TrueAlta, it asks you about your specific caregiving situation. So it'll ask you who you're caring for in terms of, are you caring for a parent? Are you caring for, a spouse, a sibling, that kind of thing. And that helps to tailor the information, as well as, are you caring for somebody who has a specific diagnosis like dementia or diabetes? Again, these sort of pieces help the program sort of tailor all of the information that you're getting to your specific situation. So once you've input that, then when you pull up this educational piece, it'll give you information that's relevant for your caregiving situation. So again, there's videos, short little videos, there's articles. They also have some of these toolkits. So once you open the toolkit, you can see there where it says 23 activities. This toolkit is, the one I'm showing here, is based just on care tasks in the bathroom. So let's say you're caring for somebody and you're having a really hard time getting some of their basic hygiene done. You're struggling to get them into the shower. You're worried about the safety concerns around that, any of those sorts of things. These toolkits will help walk you through some of those things and really help you kind of navigate some of those very specific situations. And then too, so, we're talking about all those educational pieces that TrueAlta offers. Keep in mind too that there are other opportunities. You can see on there, there's a video of good morning stretches. So that's just for you as the caregiver, right? This is just something, a little piece of self-care for yourself, right? So if it's feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm like back in school and I have to watch all these videos and read all these articles, keep in mind there are self-care opportunities as well, right? So lots of different types of ways for you to learn as a caregiver. There is also what they call their forum. So this is sort of like a chat space. So if anybody uses Facebook or any of the other social media platforms like that, it's similar to that kind of style, right? You can post a question. You can say, hey, everybody, I'm caring for my spouse and I'm having a really hard time communicating with him. He was diagnosed with dementia and I'm just having a really hard time communicating. Does anybody have any tips? And this is where all the other caregivers who have also registered for TrueAlta can answer, respond. And it really gives you that kind of interactive piece in a way that's not just the support groups, right? So like if you're just having a hard time getting on joining the support groups, but you just want to pop a question on the forum, you can jump on there. It is moderated by the professionals that run True Alta, so it's a safe space and it is moderated. And the facilitators themselves also will help sometimes jump in and answer questions as well. And you can share other resources, ideas, experiences. It's just a good another option for interacting with other caregivers. And then they also offer something called a care coach. So you've gone through all the different educational pieces, you've joined the support groups, you've looked at all these resources, but you still have a really specific question, or you just really need to talk to somebody who can maybe provide some insight in your situation. You can request a communication with a professional care coach through True Alta. They can either do a video chat with you or give you an email response. So once you're in there, you just go in, request the support. They get back to you within a couple of days, set up that time to talk, and then you can go through and ask as many questions you have. And this can become an ongoing communication that you have with them, or it can just be a one-time, hey, I just have one question. So again, that flexibility to meet whatever needs you might have. So that's the information again for registering. And then that has our contact info on there as well. So if you're having difficulty registering or anything like that, you can always contact us and we can help get you registered. Or if, like I said, if you're not in Baltimore County and you want to connect to True Alta, you can always reach out to us and we can help connect you to your local county to see if they can get you registered on True Alta through their program. And then I also wanted to, while we have a couple minutes, I wanted to share a little bit about some of our other upcoming events. Because again, these can be other opportunities for you to connect with other caregivers. So at least once a month, we go out to one of the senior centers in Baltimore County. We share about the Caregiver Support Program. We share resources. And again, sometimes this is a good opportunity just to connect with other caregivers. Just last week, I was at a resource session and a few of the caregivers ended up talking, sharing resources, and it really became their group, right? It became an opportunity for them to share. So another good opportunity to meet with other caregivers in person if that's what you're looking for. We have also partnered with the library system, and they are hosting several upcoming programs for us. This shows just a few of them. One of them being in May, it's the Care for the Caregiver meetup that's going to be at the Rosedale Library. We will share the flyer for all of these events after the presentation, probably early next week. You guys will get these flyers. Registration is done through the library for those. And we also, okay, yeah. So once a month, the Caregiver Support Group, we offer a online support group. So this is once a month on the third Thursday of each month at 1 o'clock. There is the Zoom link to join. That is the same link each month. You use the same link to join. Excuse me. And some months we have a guest facilitator. We'll have a guest facilitator come on and kind of run a group based on a specific topic or a specific idea. And sometimes it's just us, the Caregiver Support Group team, that is there just running the group and allowing everyone to chat. So you can see here coming up in May, that one is going to be just our team and we're just going to be chatting, opening up the discussion, allowing people to ask questions, share resources, that kind of thing. In June, our social worker from our hospital to home program is going to be joining us and she will be specifically talking about that topic. So let's say your loved one is hospitalized and now they're saying, okay, they're ready to discharge, they're ready to come home. Now what do I do, right? That can be a really difficult transition. So she will be talking us through that and allowing people to share experiences, resources, things like that related to that. In July, our director from our online senior center program, which is the Opal Senior Center, will be leading the discussion on staying engaged and different opportunities to do that, right? So like I said, Chastity runs the online senior center. So this is a good opportunity if you're a caregiver who has a really hard time getting out in person to the senior centers. She can talk to you about some of the online opportunities, ways to connect with other caregivers, or other opportunities just to learn if you don't want to necessarily do some of the caregiving specific stuff, but you want to join some of the online classes. In August, Roni's colleague Marcy from the Mental Health Association of Maryland will be talking about the importance of setting boundaries as a caregiver, something that I think we probably all struggle with. So she will be discussing that with us in August. And then, so if you wanted to join that group, like I said, the link is on there. We're going to be sending these slides out, and you can always contact us directly via phone or email to get that link to join as well. And if you join our email list, we send out a reminder for that each month as well. So just let us know if you want to get on that email list. And then I just want to share. Like I said, I had mentioned earlier that we partnered with the library system. This is the flyer for those upcoming events with the library. They're doing a ton of different programs, lots of different information. Some of it is educational. So if you're looking for something that's really, more education focused, like you could see at the bottom there, there's some upcoming ones about financial caregiving. So if you're not sure how to navigate that as a caregiver, those are going to be really great presentations, or understanding elder law. And then some of them are more fun, right? So if you see up at the top, there's candle making, pasta making, right? Some more fun stuff if you're looking for something a little bit more fun and ways, but again, ways to connect with other caregivers, but in more of a fun format. Those are opportunities as well. Okay, I'm going to, well, actually, I'll leave this up for a minute. And that has different ways to connect with us online. And then, are there any specific questions? I haven't had the chat up. Does anybody have any specific questions about True Alta or about any of the other things that I mentioned?
So far, nothing is in the chat.
Okay. All right, I'm going to stop sharing.
So we still have a few more minutes before the next speaker joins us. So I wanted to talk about some of the memory cafes, which is another wonderful way of supporting caregivers and their loved ones living with dementia in particular. So let me see here. Okay. Sure, this is going to come up. I don't know if you have it readily available, Nicole. I have it here, but I don't know if it's going to visually appear correctly. So let's see. Let's see. Trying to see if I can show you guys a little bit better than this. Just kind of bring it up on its own here. Maybe I can.
If you can collapse the two sides, there's X's at the top of each one.
Thank you, Ethel. I knew there was
You're
something
welcome.
easy to do.
And then you can go to the right-hand bottom corner and hit the plus magnifier, and then you should be able to show part of it and kind of slide through the page.
Okay, perfect.
Awesome. You got it.
Everybody see that okay? Okay. Very good. So, dementia-friendly program was able to provide under the dementia grant wonderful opportunities to support engaging and restorative cafes, nature groups. This year, they added a project with the Iris Music Project, which is an inclusive choir for older adults with cognitive decline, which is wonderful. This is in partnership with the Weinberg Village. And they host this program every Friday at 12:30 to 2. There's no singing experience necessary, which is wonderful. I know they're still looking for participants to join the choir. There is a Golden Age Village with the Islamic Society of Baltimore, and that is in Windsor Mill. And this, I believe, is their second year hosting a memory cafe with activities such as crafts, puzzles, movement, and more. And that is the second Wednesday of each month from noon to 2. The Jewish Community Services, which I had the honor and privilege of going to last week, offers a memory cafe with meaningful programs, conversation, arts and crafts. I was able to partake in an arts and crafts project. So I was able to meet several caregivers and their loved ones and watch as they work together and create art, and as a way for them to be able to enjoy life and activity without having to think or remember things. They could just express themselves through this art project, which at the time was with stained glass. And so it was really beautiful. That is actually the third Tuesdays of each month from 2 to 3. And each cafe is a little different depending on what program they have scheduled for that week. This is held at the Meyerberg Center, Falstaff Road in Baltimore. So that's in Pikesville. Next, we have the Morning Star Baptist Church, which offers engaging sessions. They have an upcoming program, including recipe sharing and therapeutic Lego building. And if you haven't had the opportunity to participate in the Lego building, it is a lot of fun. It's not just for kids. And it is an opportunity for people, again, a way to express yourself, a way to work together. Their dates are April 18th and June 20th from 10 to noon, and that is in Woodlawn at the Morning Star Baptist Church. We also have Neighborhood Companions Incorporated. They host a memory cafe known as BRAIN, or Building Resilient Aging Inclusive Neighborhoods, including reminiscent activities, art therapy, and movement. This is held at the Fleming Senior Center in Baltimore, near Dundalk, third Thursdays monthly. So they have a couple dates coming up in April, May, and June from 2 to 3 p.m. Talmar is a wonderful nature memory cafe, and it's held in a sensory garden outside for horticultural activities and socialization. I know that Emily Kearns, who oversees the grants, and had a site visit last week. And Russia, you were there as well. Did you want to speak a little bit about what you witnessed at
Yes,
Talmar?
it was wonderful. What I experienced there is, again, it is nature. The individuals or the participants normally interact with one another, and there were arts and crafts at that particular time. The host presented a lot of information regarding some of the activities that they participate in. There's gardening, so many different things that they even have. At the time that I visited, there was one of the rescue animals that came to, the folks enjoyed watching that particular type of activity. So I really think it is a great adventure for someone to come out and just be a part of this particular group. It is very enhancing to not only motor skills, but it engages the individual that may have the challenges that they face on a day-to-day basis. It seems to relieve the tension that folks normally have when they do come among individuals that they don't know, but they were able to interact. So I enjoyed it very much. Thank you for asking.
Yes, thank you for sharing that. This is actually one Friday per month, and it's located at the Cromwell Valley Park on Cromwell Bridge Road in Parkville. We also have, last but not least, the Well for the Journey. I've had the honor of going to the Well for the Journey on several of their programs, one including a caregivers retreat. For this particular grant, they are presenting Moments in Bloom, Nature, Connection, and Fresh Air. They feature gentle nature walks, guided reminiscence, and other nature-themed sensory experiences. This is kind of a new spin to their grant this year. They were with us last year as well, but they want to focus more on being outside and being together and having the experience. They have a labyrinth in the back of their building in the woods, and it's a beautiful way to walk and meditate, and they talk about the different types of trees. And it's just a way to have that moment of respite and a way to share with your loved one as well, the moments that you can have in nature together, and being out in that fresh air together is so important in the sunshine. And so that's very exciting. They have dates coming up, April 17th, May 29th, and it runs from 10:30 to 1 p.m. And I know there was a question that popped up in the chat.
Yes.
Might be able to respond directly into the chat, but just to say that it is for those individuals who are experiencing cognitive impairment. So it is not limited to those with dementia diagnoses only. So for more information, we have that information here. We could also put that in the chat as well. And Emily Kearns is actually going to be our next speaker. And she is connecting at this moment. So we'll go wait for her to pop on, and then she'll be able to speak to you all on our final component of the day. Anybody have any other questions? I'll stop sharing. And we'd be happy to send this flyer out to you as well. Oh, there she is. All right. So last but not least, I have the privilege to introduce you to Emily Kearns. Emily is the coordinator for the community-based cross-sector initiative, Dementia Friendly Baltimore County, led by the Baltimore County Department of Aging. Emily's personal experience care partnering with her parents, who both live with dementia, was life-changing, catapulting her into what is now her first love, supporting those living with dementia. Emily is committed to change-making, including innovative programming and community education, so that individuals living with dementia may continue to live well, experiencing joy and meaningful engagement in their communities that support and celebrate them and the life that they choose. Welcome, Emily. Nope, we must have lost Emily. Let's see. She's trying to come back in. Apologize for the delay. Looks like Emily has lost power. Yeah, we can see her up there, so having some technical difficulties. Nicole put in the chat about dementia-friendly Baltimore County, and there's also information about dementia-friendly America. We get a little bit more information. Oh, it looks like Keela had put in about the Neighborhood Companions Incorporated. Keela, would you mind sharing a little bit more about it as we wait for Emily to come back on? If you could unmute her, Ethel.
She's set.
Good afternoon or good morning. Is everyone able to hear me?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. So, hi everyone. I'm Kayala Travers. I'm the program manager at Neighborhood Companions, and we're based in the Turner Station, Dundalk area. And our last memory cafe, we planted a pot. We expressed how it felt, the connections towards childhood, and then how it made them feel more grounded within the moment. And then our next memory cafe is on May 21st from 2 to 3, and we're going to be walking around the Fleming Park with 2 stops, one at the pier, so that way we can ground ourselves with water, how that makes us feel being around the water, seeing water, and then we're going to walk to the gazebo where we'll be able to express how the walk made us feel, as well as the therapeutic what's it called effects it has with walking and talking and expressing either their concerns, their appreciation, just whatever they have in that moment, just so that way it's a verbal journaling experience. So thank you.
Thank you
Hey,
so
everyone, I
much.
apologize for that. We lost power right when you were introducing me, but here we are. Good. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, welcome, Emily. Thank you so much for being here.
Great. Should I just go right in or go ahead, please?
Yep, you can go ahead. I already introduced you and gave your bit of your background, and prior to you coming on, I discussed all the memory cafes.
Brilliant. Thanks so
then
much.
Kiela was so gracious in coming on and speaking about her particular cafe as well.
Oh, brilliant. Thanks, Kayla. All right, let me share my screen and I'll pull up the PowerPoint. Can you all see this?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. Well, thank you for having me. Got a little flustered there with losing the power. But anyway, so it's my honor and delight to be with you today. And kudos to the Caregiver program and to Kathleen and her team for pulling this together. Let's start. So a little bit about me. I'm here for professional as well as personal reasons. Kathleen may have said, and I didn't hear, but anyway, I'm here because both my parents lived with dementia. Prior to that, I was teaching college. My sister now lives with dementia, so I'm on the dementia journey with many of you as well as coordinating the Dementia Friendly Initiative and being a dementia specialist with the Caregiver program and the Community Services Division. Today, we're going to talk about the why. Why care about taking care of ourselves and focusing in on our own brain health. What we can do to reduce our stress based on brain health research. What are some of the self-care practices that I'll introduce that we can use? And also we'll take some questions and discussions. So I'll go till about 11:30. If you have anything pressing, you can put it in the chat, especially if you want me to repeat something or slow down. But if you can wait till the end with your question, that would be ideal. But the chat will be monitored, so please let me know if you need clarification on something as we go along. Okay, so the why. Caregiver stress is real. And first of all, let me back up. Many of us say, I'm not a caregiver, but I do support my mother, my sister, my grandchildren. Rosalind Carter said something like, if you're not a caregiver today, you have been one in the past and you will be one in the future. Caregivers really are care partners, those supporting anyone and everyone in many different ways, whether we're driving them, whether we're providing emotional support. In the world of dementia, 30 to 40% of dementia caregivers or care partners live with depression, emotional stress. A really sobering statistic is that about 40% of dementia care partners actually get sick or die before their loved ones because of the stress. So taking care of ourselves and our brain and our health is really paramount, even though it's not naturally the first thing that we think about. The research is showing that behind most disease, or the root cause of most disease, including cognitive challenges and dementia, is inflammation. And what's the root cause of inflammation? It's stress. And caregiving, care partnering is really like a marathon. Now, we just had the Boston Marathon. And so we saw people crossing the finish line. If you haven't, check it out on YouTube. And most people are exuberant, and many people are compromised by the time they get to the end, barely standing, sometimes needing a wheelchair because they've collapsed. We want to make sure that on our care partnering journey that we pace ourselves just like marathon runners, and we do the self-care, and we have the care team that the marathoner needs. We also need it. So that's what we'll focus on today. The good news is that behind disease, they're finding, especially in the world of dementia, that genetics only explains a small proportion or is the cause of the small proportion of dementia. It only plays a minor role. What the research is showing is that the environment and lifestyle play an even more important role. So to me, this is exciting news, and I never want to be Disney about any of this, promising a magic wand, but it means that we have an opportunity to really look at our lifestyle, to look at our environment, to look at our communities, to look at what they're talking about as social determinants of health, which means the resources and the access people have or don't have to those resources to really make a difference in our own lives, but also in the lives of the next generation. How is this so important? Why is it so important? Some diseases, such as dementia, such as Alzheimer's, the most common form of dementia, Alzheimer's starts affecting our brain 20 to 30 years before we see it, before it's symptomatic. That means the 40-year-old who's stressed, like most of us at 40, juggling many things, including caregiving, including our careers, several jobs oftentimes, or a couple jobs oftentimes, given the need, for a mortgage and things like this. We are stressed. We are stressing our brains, and our brain is setting itself up for how it will be when we're in our 70s. So this is real important for the prevention piece of our health. The research is really sobering. It's indicating that younger and younger folks now, even in their 40s, are showing signs of what they're calling subjective cognitive decline. There was a research study through Yale that was 10 years, a longitudinal study following some young folks in their 20s and 30s, and a significant proportion of them was showing signs of what the CDC calls cognitive disability. There are a lot of reasons for this, but part of it they're suggesting is because of stress. All right, this is not moving organically. Okay, so why the brain, which is the focus of today? The brain is the CEO of our nervous system. And look, I love this picture. I can't take credit for it, but I found it online. Look at what it's responsible for. It's responsible for, of course, our heart, but also for all that our learning, our relaxation. It's responsible for our choices, whether we smoke or not. It's responsible for our extracurricular, our fun, like dancing here or the ice hockey stick. It's responsible for how we choose our food, the fish and all. It's got a lot of work to do, right? This is another way depicting it, using words, depending on what kind of learning style you use. But as I mentioned, just like the marathoner, This brain needs a lot of oxygen, needs to make sure it's not stressed, and it means that as a care partner, while we're focusing on others, we really need to put our oxygen mask on ourselves first. So what we need to do is pause, build in pauses during our day, but also especially if we're starting to get activated. By activation, what I mean is if we're in a situation where we start to feel fight, flight, freeze, or even fawn mode. Fawn is where we go along with things just to survive, basically. So even if things are uncomfortable, we still play along with it. So that's fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. We need to pause and check in. How is our nervous system? How is that CEO doing in terms of monitoring and supporting our nervous system? What is my oxygen level like? We have some great resources for doing that. I have a couple surveys you can check back in later, and I can share those with you based on a great book called The Healing Self by Dr. Deepak Chopra and Dr. Rudolph Tanzi. They actually have a survey to help us check in with that oxygen level, how much stress we have or we're carrying. We need to practice the self-care that we'll talk about here. And as I said, we need to think of this as a marathon requiring pacing and refueling. So what are some of the signs of activation, some of the signs of stress? Frustration, anger, helplessness, feeling overwhelmed, feeling alone, isolated. Care partnering is very often a lonely journey, isn't it? I experienced that very much with my parents. I'd come home from seeing them and I felt like my family just didn't get it. Here I was surrounded by people, but people didn't really understand what it meant to go visit someone living with dementia and have them potentially like not know who I was or whatever the day's sense of loss was about. Sleeping too much or too little. So sleep is really, really important. We'll talk more about that. Feeling tired much of the time. Losing interest in activities that we enjoy before we became a care partner, being easily irritated or angered, going to the first bullet here, feeling worried or sad often, I would say emotional extremes, even, extreme joy and then the quick pivot to sad or worry. This emotionality can oftentimes indicate that we're stressed, even if it looks like, hyper joy. Having headaches or body aches. So there's a great book that's become quite mainstream now. The title is The Body Keeps the Score. And it indicates that, even if we can soldier on, which most of us do, especially in our 40s and 30s and 40s, taking care of others, taking care of all that needs to be taken care of our body. Our body remembers that stress settles in our at a cellular level. And later when we're older, our bodies oftentimes start to speak about all that we held. So we start to get aches and pains. We start to get, old injuries start speaking to us. So this can be exacerbated by stress, right? All that we've held in the past, anything that's overwhelmed us in the past can start to show up. Also, signs of stress is substance abuse, alcohol use, drugs abuse, over or under eating. So under eating also times losing weight because we just don't have an appetite can be a sign of stress. So of course, with stress comes certain health effects, right? Depression, anxiety, weak immune system. We may be, getting colds or the flu quite often. Obesity, we talked about, our weight fluctuation. Higher risk for chronic diseases, again, with inflammation as the root cause is what the research is indicating. And even the care partner can start having the memory and focusing difficulties because, remember, going back to that first slide, look at all that CEO, the brain, is responsible for. So I've been talking about fight, flight, or freeze. I'm not going to go into great detail, but I love this image of the polyvagal theory created or purported by Dr. Stephen Porges, who talks about how we respond to stress, how we respond to stress as a threat. As mammals, we are constantly surveying our environment for anything that will threaten us, and stress does. The bottom level here is when we're absolutely chill, not stressed. It's called the ventral We're able to experience joy, compassion. We're able to be mindful. On the right-hand side is how it affects our environment, and our stress level affects our nervous system. Again, we won't go into this. If you want a copy of this, you can have it for later. The middle is the sympathetic system, where if we're in the fight mode, we're angry, irritated, frustrated. If we're in the flight mode, we're experiencing anxiety, worry, or concern. We tend to move away from the stress or the cause of the stress. Again, you can see in the right-hand side how our bodies, our nervous system is affected. So in this case, when we're in fight or flight mode, our blood pressure is affected, our heart rate, we can have blood clotting. The freeze mode, the blue zone, he refers to as a dorsal vagal. And here we can disassociate, leave in our head if we can't get away with the flight mode. Numbness, depression oftentimes is the freeze response. And again, it's affecting our nervous system. Here's another depiction of it that I like even better. Less is more, right? But look at the dorsal vagal. We have collapsed, absolutely collapsed as a care partner. The sympathetic, we're just hanging on, right? And the ventral, that's the green garden mode, where we're in the joy and compassion and openness mode. We've got this. We're pretty centered and grounded. And that's the mode we want to be in through some self-care practices. The brain research is really important. As I said earlier, it gives us opportunity to change our lifestyle and also our environments. Dr. Sanjay Gupta, maybe you know him. He is the health correspondent for CNN. I had the honor and the privilege of meeting him he was a keynote for ASA, I think 2, maybe 3 years ago. And he had a book signing of his new book. And the new book is called Keep Sharp, where he lays out, based on real rigorous brain health that he cites, from many different sources. He lays out key pillars to brain health. And remember, as care partners, but also all of us really need to take care of this chief executive officer of the nervous system, something I always took for granted. I don't know about you, but let's go through some of the key pillars really briefly. If you want more in-depth information about these, go to his book, but you can also reach back to me too. The first one is nutrition. We're learning a lot about nutrition from many different sources, right? But he emphasizes what we're hearing much about in terms of the Mediterranean diet, plant-based, salmon, fish, moving away from the red meat, moving away from what he calls the SAD diet, which is the American diet based on, has a lot of salt actually in it. Salt and sugar and fried foods, processed foods. And again, this is really superficial recap of his book, but you want to get the book. And there's also a workbook that corresponds to this. I think it's called, well, I have it here later in the bibliography. Actually, I'm not sure if it's in the slide show or not, but it's called 12 Weeks to a Stronger You. But it's kind of like journaling to help us assess these different pillars, where we're at and what we can do to change. I love the second pillar he talks about as movement, which is beyond the rigorous exercise. He talks about a brisk walk every day. And while we're walking, we should talk to our friends about our stress or problems. I love that. Most of us can do it. Downtime, he says, while we're awake, to reduce stress, right? To reduce the inflammation, we need chill time. We need time where we're just resting, but we're not sleeping. Restorative sleep, he says we need 7 to 8 hours a day, but the good news is we don't need it all in one chunk. And I don't know about you, but 2 or 3 in the morning, many of us are up. But if we power nap later in the day, that can, fulfill that 7 to 8 hours. Real important, he says, and again, he uses much more technical language and really documents this with substantive research. But he says basically, in layperson's language, when we sleep, our brain cleans itself out and needs that time. Discovery, I love his term discovery. What he means is constantly learning, trying new things. The synapses need to be stretched, need to keep firing in our brains. He says, if we do puzzles and crosswords, that's great if it brings us joy. But if we've been doing them for decades, it's not necessarily stretching. It's nothing new. So he says, even simple things, and I love this about his approach. He's not asking us to be radical in terms of the changes we make, but starting small, not revolutionary, because he says if we start small and tweak our lifestyles, it's probably more likely to sustain. Just like any of us who have been on diets, it's really hard to sustain a radical diet, isn't it? But if we make tweaks and small changes in our diets over time, that's more sustainable oftentimes. So discovery, he says, like a small change you can make is if we brush our teeth with our right hand, start doing it with our left. Try it. If we usually walk our block clockwise, try counterclockwise. I love this. And now that I have a toddler grandson, I call it the toddler brain, because the grandchildren, the toddlers, they're asking about everything. You know, they see a gutter pipe and they're like, well, what's that for? I say, the water, you know, drink. Well, where does it come from? Where does it go? Can we see where it ends up, you know? So this is the kind of brain that he's saying that we need to cultivate as we're older. And so learn a new language, travel vicariously, even through virtual travel, learn a new instrument, sing. You know, there's so many, the sky's the limit, truthfully, because of technology now. Even if we're challenged and can't travel physically, we can do it virtually. Connection, real important. There's research that shows that isolation shortens our life more than living with disabilities or smoking. Isn't that amazing? And his research also indicates that we really must build and create communities. So if you're going to senior centers or you have faith communities, book clubs, gardening, community gardening, try to be with others, because this is really important, again, for the brain. You don't, I never thought of all of these things impacting, you know, our brain health, but they do. Another resource for looking at brain health is the Blue Zones. Perhaps you've seen Blue Zones as a series on Netflix. They've monetized it quite well. They have cookbooks, things like that. But check out the book, The Blue Zones Challenge by Dan Buettner. Blue Zones was research funded by National Geographic, I think more than a decade ago now, quite a while ago. They went around the world to try to find the secret to longevity. They identified communities that had the most 100-plus-year-olds, and they did qualitative research. They observed, they did interviews, and again, like Dr. Sanjay Gupta, they identified some key pillars to longevity. And some of these are similar to Dr. Sanjay Gupta. Move naturally, remember that brisk walking, sense of purpose. This is so key, especially in our mainstream American culture. If we retire, if their kids move away, I can't tell you how many folks I know older folks who say that they're depressed and lonely and they don't know what to do. This is where volunteering really is important. And you can always check out our RSVP program. I'm going to put a plug there at the Baltimore County Department of Aging. They can match you with a purposeful volunteer position. Downshift, that's very much like Dr. Sanjay Gupta's, you know, chilling or downtime. 80% rule. Now, this is interesting, and I wish I had a gauge for me to help. It means not eating until we're 100% full, stopping before we are. But how many of us can monitor that? You know, it's really hard, especially when you have a lunch buffet right in front of us. Plant slant means, again, staying away from the meat, especially the red meats. Wine at 5. Now, there's mixed research about this, but the Blue Zones say that many of these, you know, communities enjoy some wine. Now, the last 3 go back to that connection, sense of belonging, being with the right tribe. They use this verbiage. Our loved ones, being connected actually has the physiological effect, especially around brain health. Oh, thanks, Nicole. Nicole put the RSVP, the Retired and Senior Volunteer Program, in the chat, so please check that out. So, recipe for the body, mind, spirit, just recapping, pulling from both of those resources, Dr. Sanjay Gupta and the Blue Zones. We have the Mediterranean diet, sleeping 7 to 8 hours, daily exercise, walking briskly, the natural walking, cultivating a sense of humor. Now that came, I think, from Dr. Sanjay Gupta, and in his presentation, he uses humor quite a bit. Reducing stress through certain practices, and that's the next, what I'll segue to now, but mindfulness practices, including meditation, prayer, learning new things, that's the discovery mode, right? That Gupta talked about. And the last, or the next two, staying socially engaged, having a sense of purpose, and the final one, counseling. So with aging, there's a lot of opportunity and newness and excitement, and there's also a lot of loss and change. And grief, they're saying, new research around grief is talking about the physiological aspect of grief. Remember the book I just mentioned, The Body Keeps a Score. When someone is grieving, which I've just recently learned, it can actually manifest like dementia. It can affect our cognitive capacities. And yet it's not a dementia disease. It's actually an actual physiological response that helps our body and our mind rest to give space to the loss. That's so important as we grieve. Again, in our dominant culture, especially if we're working, we get like 3 days off and then chop, chop, back to work. The body keeps a score and knows that we need more time, and so the brain may start to rest. And this is all, again, in layperson's terms, but counseling is a real important resource to build that hammock of support. If you imagine laying in a hammock, that hammock needs to be a woven web of supports for ourselves so we can care for others, actually. So these are some of the resources. Oh, good. I do have this slide in here. The Blue Zones Challenge, the Keep Sharp, and then the workbook that I mentioned, 12 Weeks to a Sharper You. That's the proper title. I misspoke before. And then Alzheimer's Association has brain health resources on its website, as do, some other national organizations, for example, the National Alliance for Caregiving. And so again, if you get the slide deck, you can go to these resources. So what are some of those self-care practices? That's what I want to emphasize in the last few minutes here that can fill our well. Again, reducing our stress, reducing inflammation, helping us show up for others means that we need to show up for ourselves first. So music and movement. There's a great program called Music and Memory, evidence-based, which means that it shows the research indicates the positive impact that this has on our physiology, as well as our social relations and other variables or other factors. Check out musicandmemory.org. And also check out the documentary Alive Inside. But it shows the positive, the meaningful connection, I guess, that we can have for ourselves, but also with others through music, memory. Oftentimes, poetry and prayers, same part of the brain. Someone living with cognitive challenges and or a dementia disease, all their life, even to the late stages, even close to death, they'll remember their prayers, their poetry, and they'll be able to also remember some of their favorite songs. It's a great way for care partners to connect, but it's a great way for care partners to take care of ourselves as well. Storytelling also brings much joy. There's a great program called Time Slips, and I think it's just timeslips.org, which asks us to think about, they use this phrase, I love it, big, beautiful questions. So instead of thinking in just yes, no questions for ourselves, am I happy? Yes, no. We open it up. How do we feel? How does this day, how does this sunlight, how does this piece of art, how does this song make us feel? And we tell stories around pictures. They have a whole protocol and they have a training, but it's a great way to connect with others. It's also a great way to calm our nervous system. When we start thinking about the stories we tell ourselves, we can actually reframe some of those. Of course, counseling helps, but storytelling using time slips is a very creative way for us to do it with others. So check it out, Time Slips. We can also go into, experience nature. Forest bathing is a practice. Maybe some of you have heard about it. It really became a big thing in Japan in the 1980s and now has proliferated across the world. And it really simply means spending time in nature and resting in nature. And some folks have told me, especially as we're older, it's hard to go out, to hike and go to nature centers with our loved ones and even ourselves if we are challenged physically or cognitively, but we can bring nature in, right? I went to a memory cafe at Talmar which is one of the creative engagement. Thank you. Russia just put in the chat the Alzheimer's Association 24/7 helpline, which is a great resource. But I went to Talmar Horticulture and Therapeutic Center last week for their monthly memory cafe. And they have someone who comes, she started a pet therapy program and she comes with her dog. And here we were outside, participants were painting rocks, to make these lovely kindness rocks to put in their sensory garden. And this dog was running around with a Frisbee. And it was so amazing to be outside together, experiencing the nature and community at one time. And the forest bathing can bring that individually. If we need to be restored, we can sit in nature. We can also bring nature in. There's a great program called Nature Connection. It's out of Massachusetts, but they do online training as well for care partners, where we can bring feathers into a visit, into a home. We can bring leaves. Of course, we can bring pets. And again, through the time slips, we can talk about and create stories about nature and how it's filling our well. Alone, we need that to do this, but also with others. Touch is huge. And even if someone has lost their capacity to speak, if they're living with aphasia, which means they can't find their right words, they are sentient beings. And touch is so important. And so hand and foot massages are important for others, but again, we're focusing on ourselves. We need the hand and foot massages. We need the snuggling as care partners. We need the back rubs as well. We need affirmations. We can look at letters and cards we get from family and friends to affirm us as care partners, but we can also build this into our visits with our loved ones living with challenges. Food, of course, is important, and that's part of Dr. Sanjay Gupta's mantra, is especially around nutrition. While we're trying to eat healthily, we also must remember joy, and we have to think about that. We can't, make it kind of a detention moment, when we're eating. And just as a sidebar, one of the things I'm noticing is that a lot of us as older folks, for ourselves and others, aren't focusing on our dental care. It's like one of the last things we think about. And yet, if we think about food as a real important source of joy and replenishing our well, we must really make dental care a priority. And that's always woven into our self-care sessions. And I want to give it a shout out here. We talk about the spiritual with a little s, which means whatever fills your well. If you're religious with a big R, you're part of a faith community, continue that. That can be a real important source for yourself as a marathoner, right? Practice rituals or create rituals. They don't have to be related to religion with a big R. There are a lot of rituals, like even painting the rocks, as I talked about, that they did in the Memory Cafe. That is an example of a ritual. Prayer, going to services, meditation, even walking in nature, for me, is a spiritual experience. Spiritual meaning, filling the whole person, filling our whole bodies. We have a great partner in our dementia-friendly leadership team, 2 representatives from the Well for the Journey, and that's an example of a non-denominational spiritual retreat place, and they do a lot of programs outside, including a nature series now for those living with cognitive challenges and care partners. And so check out, back to that flyer that we had up earlier, they're listed, but that is a spiritual site with a little s for the whole being. Make sure we get support through support groups. We can go with others, but also ourselves. And support groups really vary in personality. A lot of them are virtual, but there's some in person. And you can reach back to the Caregiver program for a list of support groups. Also, that 24/7 helpline that Russia put in the chat through the Alzheimer's Association can have a list of support groups in your area. Self-care rituals, it might include writing. There's something called Morning Pages by Julia Cameron. She named it, but that's sitting every morning or whatever good time of the day is for you, and just writing without the inner critic stopping, just writing anything that comes to mind. And they're saying that that is really a self-care ritual, helping us companion with ourselves. We talked about massage, manicure, the naps goes back to that restorative sleep. And by the way, there's research by someone named Dr. Lund, L-U-N-D, who talked about during respite, which means taking a break from our caregiving, our care partnering, needing to be something meaningful. He said if during our break we go and take care of our regular business, our laundry, our bills, actually that can lead to more stress and depression. Isn't that interesting? We think it would relieve it, but he says during respite we must return to something that used to bring us joy that we've left aside because of our caregiving responsibilities, or finding joy in something new. But it needs to be filling that well, our respite, for it to be restorative. I talked about counseling really being important for grief. Also, there's something called yoga laughter. We must bring humor into this caregiving journey. We talked about touch already. Wait a minute, where am I going? Letters, that's redundant, and meals. We talked about how important that is for self-care, but also for communication and meaningful connection with others. I'm going to stop here. It's 11:30. I'll stop sharing. This is my contact information. Reach back to me, dementia friendly at baltimorecountymd.gov anytime. And I'll stop sharing and we'll go to questions and comments. Any comments or
questions? I'm sorry, go ahead, Emily.
No, I just said any questions or comments. Go for it, Nicole, please. Take it away.
I was just going to say, if anyone has questions, feel free to put those in the chat. Let us know if you have any questions. I'm going to give people a moment. And Emily's contact info is in the chat as well. And then again, we will be sharing slides. Early next week, you'll be getting those, as well as any of the resources we mentioned will be included in everyone's contact info. If there are no questions, Russia, if you're available now, we did want to take a couple minutes to talk about another resource within the Caregiver Support Program. If you're looking for more support and guidance along your caregiving journey, if you're caring for somebody who is living with dementia, I wanted to give Russia Singleton an opportunity to talk a little bit. She's our new dementia care navigator. So I'm going to turn the floor over to you, Russia, if you want to chat and let people know about it.
Hello, everyone. Thank you again for coming today. We do appreciate your attendance and any concerns that you may have to address. What I do is I assist individuals, which is the caregiver or the care recipient, or the care recipient, finding resources that pertains to dementia or any cognitive impairment concerns. We pretty much would collaborate with each other to come up with some plans or steps to help with activities that may engage the individual, which is the care recipient, that is having some concerns with cognitive impairment or challenges. Ideally, the program is to help an individual, which is the caregiver, who has lack of support. This also includes the recipient, because that recipient may not have family members that usually can step in and assist. We try to build a support village around the individual, and this may consist of whomever is within that person's community that engages that individual, which includes Department of Aging, because we have a plethora of programs that allows resources that could help that individual, which is the caregiver and or the recipient, receive some relief or some form of action within their daily activities. As mentioned with all of our speakers today, which I want to say kudos and thank you to you for presenting, the information is very important to understand how an individual can find next steps, regardless if it's the caregiver or the recipient that is faced with the challenges for day to day. With the Dementia Care Navigation Program, it is ideally at this time short term, but the services can be extended to 6 months to a year. But we collaborate again, like I said before, with other agencies like the Community Outreach Program, Maryland Access Point, which is one of our hub of host of community resources, senior care, or our senior centers. There are so many different types of programs that we try to help individuals within the community with. Ideally, with the caregiver support program is where I am stationed. We tend to see a high volume of families that are in need, and we tend to try to address those needs accordingly. And with that being said, it could be resources because of finances, or it could be resources to link for mental health or support groups. Understanding the dementia and the different stages within the dementia, which is the journey itself, because as we know, once you have, or the individual, which is the recipient, have been evaluated by a neurologist, that individual will then have a better understanding of where they are within the stages of the cognitive impairment or challenges. Ideally, I would do like an 88 screening just to give an insight of how they could present it to their primary care provider. And then from there, ideally, the care provider can give a referral to the neurologist if one is not in place. Then there's the John Hopkins memory checklist. This helps a lot of the caregivers to understand that there are additional resources from what Department of Aging can offer as well within the community of where they reside. And as Ms. Emily mentioned, with the Alzheimer's Association, I also offer those resources within that particular agency, excuse me, to offer additional resources to help the individual or individuals understand where the recipient is and how to assist the recipient with all activities. If it's at a point within the stages of their, which is usually around the end stage of the dementia that the person may be experiencing, some folks decide to look into other services like palliative care or hospice care or assisted living, things of that nature that possibly could help the individual because the caregiver is at a stressful wit's end and feel that this may be the best opportunity. So ideally, we talk about what could be the best strategy for the caregiver as well as the recipient to understand what next steps, what could take place. What does that look like? How could me and the team, which is Department of Aging, help you within the community receive the best resources that could enlighten your day-to-day activities? That is the biggest goal that I have. That is my mission, is to help individuals understand what is out there, what they can receive, because there are plenty of resources like the True Alta that can guide you on ways to understand, not only for yourself, because you have to take care of self in order to take care of someone else, and the importance of making sure that both you, the caregiver, and the recipient, which is your loved one that may have the memory challenge or impairment, could receive the best form of living within the moment. Because right now, that's all we have is within the moment. I do appreciate your time today. If you have any questions or concerns, please feel free to contact me. I will put my phone number in the chat, but it is within the Caregiver Support Program. And directly, you can ask me any questions there is.
Thank you so much, Russia. Anyone have any questions for Russia at this point? I know it's a lot to think about and consider, but if this seems like something that you would need assistance with, we're more than happy to help you with the Caregiver Support Program. Information is in the chat, how to reach us. Oh, Miss Bridget, yes. She could be unmuted. Bridget, you have a question? She's unmuted or not. Ethel, are you able to unmute Bridget?
She should be good now.
Thank you.
Thank you. So my question is, how do you navigate, like, so my husband has CNS vasculitis, which he's had suffered like 8 strokes, and they've affected his cognitive, some of his cognitive abilities. You can't even tell that he had the strokes because, like, if you looked at him, but they did advise us that his illness could lead to early stages of dementia. And so I guess for me personally, just to understand like the signs and things that, could potentially lead to that. So I don't know if there are any options prior to it getting to that, that you would be able to provide, or point me in the right direction. I just want to be proactive rather than reactive, just so I can, notice when there's changes. I know in the past he's left the water running, like he'll go to the bathroom, leave the water running, and forget that he's, washed his hands and things like that. So just knowing the signs to look for so that we can be ahead of it.
Well, with mild cognitiveness, it sounds like he's in the early stages of it. Possibility, because I'm not a
Yes.
neurologist.
Right.
But with that being said, there's no cookie cutter. I would suggest at this particular time, if you could, if I'm not sure if he has a neurologist, but he may more likely have a primary or a specialist that's working with him.
Yes, we do.
Document as much as you can, or if not you directly, whomever is observing him throughout the course of the day.
Which is me.
Understood. And with that being said, is you're going to start noticing the trend of the different types of behaviors that will possibly increase. When you stated like the running water, he remembered to go to wash his hands, but he at one point forgot. And from there could be, say for instance, at this particular time, because this is current that you spoke of, Maybe you could put in the bathroom or where he usually rinses his hands at, and put like a little note or something that he's aware of. That's, to remind him of little tasks that he may be forgetting. Helpful tips, I call them.
Okay.
Then you want to discuss it with the primary. This is why I'm saying about the primary or the specialist, because it may be something with the medications. Just you don't want to overrule it. You want to make sure that the medications is at the right dosage or it's being given at the right time. But you want them to be aware of any changes that you notice. You, the professionals, which is hopefully also the neurologist or whatever team that's working with you and your husband, you want them to be aware of all the things that you are experiencing. They can possibly refer something, or they could run some more tests just to see if there's any changes or recommendations for next steps. That's something that just, I would suggest for now until there are indefinite
Okay.
recommendations from the professionals.
Okay. And it's so funny you said that, because I brought up some concerns at our last neurology appointment, which we have one coming up next week. But I feel like he feels like if I say it in front of the doctor, he like shuts it down. And it's like, I'm not saying it to, put you on blast or, say something's wrong with you, but I want to understand, because I'm the one that is in it. I'm the one that has to monitor the medications and different things like that. So it's like having that conversation without upsetting him is where I'm having the trouble. But I will bring that concern up with this neurologist.
Now that usually sounds normal because your husband does not want to he don't want to lose his independence.
Right, that's it.
So ideally, we try to step into the shoes of the individual to understand just that small little piece. It seems, even though we're helping our loved one, but we want to, it's basically like we're trying to not to go behind their backs, but if it keeps the peace between your household and making sure that the medical specialists are aware of what's going on because of your concerns of your loved one, we have to find different ways of how to communicate that with that professional.
Okay.
Maybe, the professional may step out of the office or the room if your husband can be left alone for a split second, and you and the professional steps out of the room and discuss whatever it is that you need to discuss about whatever concerns you may have at the time. Your husband may think you went to the bathroom, or you could say to him, "Hey, I'll be right back. I'm going to the bathroom." And
Right.
you stepped out at the same time when the doctor had stepped out. Or you may be understanding that the doctor is getting ready to step out of the office, or you talk to the nurse that's working with the doctor. There's other ways of trying to get that information across, is what I'm saying, without disrupting his peace and your peace, ideally.
Makes sense. Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Russia. Thank you so much to Emily for the presentation today. We really appreciate your time, and we're really happy you're part of the team, Russia. Thank you for being with us. And I'm grateful that we were able to develop this role in the Caregiver Support Program, because it is greatly needed. Next, we're going to conclude our conference today, but before we go, we wanted to go over the Caregiver Support Program.
All right, I am going to share my screen. All right, we good?
We're good.
All right. So if anybody today is joining who is not already familiar with the Caregiver Support Program within Baltimore County Department of Aging, we just wanted to give a couple minutes to just do a brief overview of our program so that you can connect to us more after today's program if you're interested. So we are part of the Baltimore County Department of Aging, but we are funded through the National Family Caregiver Support Program, which is under the Older Americans Act. So just keep in mind with our program, we are part of Baltimore County, and the services are for the care recipients that live in Baltimore County. But if you are caring for somebody who lives in a different county, each county in the state and every state in the country has similar programs. So just keep in mind that you can always connect to the Department of Aging in your county to be connected to their caregiver support program. So really the mission of the caregiver support program is to assist family and informal caregivers with keeping their loved ones at home for as long as possible. And so when we talk about the caregivers we serve, I'm not going to go through each of these categories of caregivers. If you're not sure if you qualify or not, you can always call our office and we can do a screening for you to see if you are eligible. But basically, we support caregivers who are caring for older adults, but we also support older adults who are caring for disabled adults or children. So that category of older adults who are caring for children, oftentimes that ends up being grandparents who have taken on that primary responsibility for caring for children. So if you fall into any of these categories, or if you're not sure if you do, just give us a call and we would do that screening. And when we talk about the services that we provide for those caregivers, there's a few things we offer. We offer access to resources and other programs that might be helpful for you. So that is typically done through a consultation where we do a one-on-one consultation with the caregiver, and we can talk about other resources, services, programs, things that might be helpful for you as a caregiver. And then we also offer once a year financial support for up to 5 years for those eligible caregivers. That can be used to offset the costs of caring for your loved one, whether that's paying somebody to come in and give you a little bit of a break, or using that money to pay for medical supplies or other needs that are not covered by insurance and other things. So basically, just sort of helping to offset the costs of caring for your loved one. And then we do outreach and education. So like programs like today, and then in the fall, we will also have our in-person conference in November. So we do lots of different programs, education, outreach, wherever we can. And again, if you wanted to access any of these services, learn more, you would contact us at the office and we could connect you to any of those services that you're interested in. Russia already talked to us a little bit about that dementia care navigation piece. And again, if you're interested in finding more about that, you would just call our office, which I also put that number in the chat. You can connect to us and find out more about that. And then, again, we talked about the upcoming events earlier, but I just wanted to put that up there again. We've got some of our resource sessions out in the senior centers, as well as some of those partner programs through the library. So we will send out the flyers, info on all these events when we do that follow-up next week, as well as the slides and any of that information. So I'm going to stop sharing right now. Does anybody have any questions specifically about the Caregiver Support Program or anything else that we didn't quite capture or get to today? And again, you can always reach out to us with questions as well.
I just want to give a shout out to Brianna, who's also with us today. She is our office assistant. So if you want to say hello, Brianna, so when you give us a call or email us, you would be speaking most of the time with Brianna. Oh, she can't unmute. Okay. Well, we thank you, Brianna, for all your work with the team, and we hope you all can reach out to Brianna and speak with her, and she can guide you with what we do with the program.
Can you hear me? I think I was
Yes.
unmuted.
There you
Okay.
are.
Hi. Yes. Hi, everybody. I am Brianna. As Kathleen said, I'm our office assistant. So about 95% of the time, if you call our office, it'll be me answering. I'm always happy to help and answer any questions that anybody may have. So please, I look forward to speaking to y'all on the phone to call when you call our office and call the program. So thanks for joining us today and thanks for coming.
Thank you, Brianna. Okay. Well, thank you, Nicole. Thank you to the caregiver support team who works so hard to support our caregivers every day in Baltimore County. I also want to say a special thank you to Nicole, as this will be her last spring conference with us. And we thank you so much for all your hard work and dedication with the program and serving our caregivers. We will miss you, but we look forward to working with you in your new role with the department. So even though she's leaving us, she's not leaving us as a whole. So we're really grateful to you and appreciate you. Thanks again to all our presenters for taking the time to speak to us today. Thank you for all our caregivers and our aging professionals who are able to join us. Thank you to the wonderful communication team spearheaded by Ethel for all their support before, during, and after the conference, because they do a lot for us in marketing and helping with registrations and with our surveys. Please make sure that you click the link in the chat to complete our survey today. We will also be sending it to you via email. So we really appreciate your feedback. We read everything that you say, and it helps us to make better programs and conferences for you. So please let us know how you enjoyed today's conference. We hope you gained some insight into the importance of heart, mind, and community in caregiving. And we hope you're able to carry the information with you into your caregiving role. And so please reach out to us again for a consultation if you haven't already. Ask about resources, sign up for upcoming events. We hope that you enjoy the day and you enjoy the sunshine. You take a moment for yourself and you're able to continue doing the wonderful work that you do for your loved ones, your friends, your neighbors, and you're truly appreciated for all that you do. So thank you so much, and I hope to see you again in our in-person conference this fall.